The sun was hot in the small town of Georgia, where roads were quiet and fields stretched for miles. Everyone in town knew about a big piece of land at the edge of the hill. It was covered with tall grass, wildflowers, and one small wooden house that looked older than time itself. The land belonged to a woman named Miss Sarah Johnson, a calm but strong black woman in her late 60s. People used to say Sarah's land had a story no one really knew. For many years, she lived alone on that land. Every morning, she sat on her porch with a cup of coffee, looking across the open fields. To her, that land was not just dirt and grass. It was family history, full of memories from generations before her. Her great-grandparents had worked that soil when times were hard, and her parents had built the small wooden house with their own hands. But to outsiders, it was just empty space, a piece of property waiting to be developed. The arrival of HOA builders one day. Shiny black cars and trucks rolled down the dusty road. Men in suits stepped out, wearing sunglasses and carrying files. They were from a new homeowners association, HOA. They had plans to build 96 luxury homes on that same land. The men talked fast, promising a new community, progress, and modern living. To them, it was business. To Sarah, it was her life. At first, they tried to buy her land. They smiled, offered her money, a lot of money for someone living alone in an old wooden house. But Sarah just looked at them and said softly, "This land is not for sale." The men laughed politely and drove away. But they didn't stop. Strange things began weeks later. Sarah noticed survey flags near her property line, small red markers in the dirt. She didn't remember putting them there. Then trucks began clearing trees not far from her fence. At night, she could hear machines running, lights glowing through the woods. The noise echoed into her quiet home. When she called the county office, no one seemed to know who gave permission for the work. Someone said the land records were being updated. Sarah knew something was wrong, but she didn't say much. She just wrote everything down in her old notebook, every name, every date, every sound. The trap begins months passed, and soon the construction spread fast. Roads were paved, signs went up, and big billboards appeared. Welcome to Green Meadows, 96 new family homes coming soon. The HOA celebrated their success. They thought Sarah's land was already part of their plan, but she never signed a single paper. Neighbors whispered that the old woman was crazy, that she didn't understand how progress worked. But Sarah understood more than anyone. She had been watching, listening, preparing. While the builders were busy showing model homes to buyers, Sarah was busy collecting documents, land deeds, tax records, maps from the county archives. And what she found shocked even her. Her land stretched farther than anyone thought. The boundaries of her property included not just her house, but most of the area where the HOA had already built their first homes. The calm before the storm one quiet morning. When the builders came to finish another section of the road, Sarah stood by her fence holding a folder. She waited until the truck stopped. "Ma'am, you need to move back," one of the workers said. "You're standing on the company's road." Sarah smiled slowly. "No," she said. "You're standing on mine." The workers laughed, thinking it was a joke. But inside that folder were papers official. Papers that would soon change everything. The HOA had no idea that. The woman they ignored had been quietly building a trap, one that would make them regret every brick they laid. And that was only the beginning. The town woke up. One morning, too, the sound of heavy machines and shouting. The construction site was full of men in helmets, trucks moving fast, and the smell of new cement filling the air. Everyone thought the Green Meadows project was going well. Families were already booking homes. The HOA members walked proudly across the site, believing everything was under control. But far away, in her small wooden house, Miss Sarah Johnson was sitting by the window with a calm smile. Her eyes followed the dust rising in the distance. She knew the builders were working on land that was not theirs. Every brick, every nail, every dollar they spent, it was all building on her ground. The hidden power of Old Paper Sarah was not a lawyer. She didn't have fancy degrees or a big office. But she had something stronger proof. Months earlier, When she noticed the red flags and strange construction, she started digging into her family's old boxes. She found an old envelope wrapped in cloth, hidden inside a drawer her father built decades ago. Inside were yellowed documents, a land deed signed in 1911, showing her great-grandfather's name. The description of the land was larger than what everyone believed. She took those papers to the county records office. The young clerk at the desk almost laughed when she said she wanted to verify her property line. But when the clerk pulled the digital record and compared it to the original map, his face changed. "Ma'am, according to this, half of that new subdivision sits inside your boundary," he said quietly. Sarah just nodded. "I know," she replied. The clerk offered to call someone, but Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. Let them finish first." The calm before the move for weeks. She stayed quiet. She didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't post online. Instead, she watched. She wanted the HOA to build everything. The roads, the playground, even the front gates. Every day, she wrote in her notebook, how many trucks came, what they built, and who was there. She was collecting evidence while they were celebrating progress. Meanwhile, her small house looked peaceful, almost forgotten. But inside, Sarah was turning that old living room into her war room. Papers covered the table. She marked maps with red lines. Highlighting the places that belonged to her, her plan was simple. Let them trap themselves. The day of the meeting, when 96 homes were almost complete, the HOA invited all the new homeowners for a big meeting at the construction site. There were balloons, food trucks, and music. The HOA president, a man named Mr. Clark, stood on a stage with a microphone. "We're proud to announce Green Meadows is now 95% complete," he said loudly. "A new beginning for our community." The crowd cheered. But in the back, one figure stood quietly, Miss Sarah Johnson, wearing a blue dress and holding her old folder. When Mr. Clark saw her, he frowned slightly. "Oh, it's the landlady again," he whispered to another man. "Someone call security." But before anyone could move, Sarah walked to the front, climbed the small steps to the stage, and handed Mr. Clark an envelope. "Before you open those houses," she said in a calm voice, "you should check whose land you're standing on." The crowd went silent, shock and denial at first. The HOA laughed it off. They thought it was another protest. But when their lawyer opened the papers and saw the original land deed, the color drained from his face. The seal, the signature, the boundaries, all legal, all real. Sarah didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just said softly, "You built on my land without asking. Every inch you touched belongs to me." The crowd started whispering. Reporters took out their phones. Mr. Clark tried to speak, but his words stumbled. "This must be a mistake," he said. "No," Sarah replied. "It's a trap you built yourself." Quiet victory that night. News spread through the town like fire. People couldn't believe it. The rich developers had been outsmarted by a 68-year-old woman with an old folder and a calm mind in her house. Sarah sat by her window again, sipping tea. The moonlight touched her face as she whispered to herself, "They took what wasn't theirs. Now, they'll pay to keep it." What the HOA didn't know was that Sarah had already filed a legal notice, a claim that would soon cost them millions. And this was just the start of her revenge. The sun rose slowly over the town the next morning, painting the new houses of Green Meadows in golden light. Everything looked calm from the outside, but inside the HOA office, panic had begun. Mr. Clark, the HOA president, had spent the whole night making calls. His phone buzzed nonstop. Lawyers, investors, and angry buyers all wanted answers. The question on everyone's mind was the same. How could one old woman own half the land we built on? No one had an answer. The denial and the fear at first, the HOA tried to stay confident. They told the buyers not to worry. They said Sarah Johnson was just confused, even tried to claim her old documents were fake, but deep down they were scared. Their lawyer, Mr. Hayes, had already checked the county records. Sarah's name was there, clean, legal, and untouched. Her property lines extended right into the new housing development. The HOA had built 47 of their 96 homes directly inside her land. That meant they had built driveways, fences, and even a playground, all on someone else's property. The investors were furious. If Sarah filed a lawsuit, the company could lose everything. Mr. Clark slammed his desk. "We can fix this," he said. "Just buy her out. Offer double." But when they sent their offer, Sarah refused again, politely, calmly, without even raising her voice. "You had your chance," she said. "Now, it's my turn." The power of the Pensera's next move was quiet but powerful. She visited her lawyer, a young woman named Rachel Miller, who had just opened her small legal office in town. Rachel listened carefully as Sarah explained everything: the trespassing, the construction, and the ignored warnings. When Sarah finished, Rachel leaned back and said, "You have a solid case. If they built on your land without consent, you own everything standing on it." Sarah smiled. "That's what I wanted to hear." Rachel filed the paperwork the same day. Within 48 hours, the HOA received an official legal notice, a property claim demanding immediate action. It wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a declaration that every house built on her land now legally belonged to her. The public turns against the Athutha story exploded across social media. News headlines read, "Elderly woman outsmarts developers who built 96 homes on her land. HOA trapped by their own greed." People everywhere admired Sarah's courage. They called her the woman who outsmarted the system. Reporters came to her house, cameras flashing. Sarah didn't like the noise, but she spoke kindly. "I didn't do this for fame," she said softly. "I did this for respect for every person who was told they don't matter." Meanwhile, the HOA office was in chaos. Buyers wanted refunds. Construction workers stopped showing up. Mr. Clark stopped smiling. His fancy car sat unused in the parking lot, collecting dust. The trap Sarah had set was now tightening around them. Negotiations begin weeks later. The HOA's lawyers requested a meeting. They arrived in a group, wearing expensive suits and fake smiles. Sarah arrived alone, carrying her old folder as always, inside the conference room. They offered her money again, this time 10 times more than before. She opened the envelope, read the number, then closed it. "You think this is about money?" she asked quietly. "You're built without asking. You disrespected my family's land. You thought I was invisible? That's not something you can buy." Mr. Clark leaned forward. "What do you want then?" Sarah looked around the table, her eyes calm and sharp. "I want you to feel what I felt: powerless. Then we'll talk." The final check made a few days later. Sarah's lawyer sent a new proposal, but it wasn't what the HOA expected. Instead of asking for money, Sarah demanded partial ownership of the Green Meadows community. She wanted a share in every house built on her land, plus full control of the community park if they refused. She would take the case to court and likely win everything. Faced with ruin, the HOA finally agreed. Sarah Johnson, the quiet old woman everyone ignored, became a major landowner in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in town. The sweet silence after the storm that night. Sarah sat on her porch again, the sound of crickets filling the air. In the distance, the lights of Green Meadows glowed softly, lights built on her soil. She smiled, sipping her tea. "They built their dream on my land," she whispered, "and I built my victory on theirs." But deep down, she knew this story wasn't over. The HOA still had secrets, and Sarah was ready for whatever came next. The town of Georgia couldn't stop talking about Miss Sarah Johnson. The woman who once lived quietly on the edge of the hill was now the owner of Green Meadows, a place that once tried to erase her from the outside. Everything looked calm. The houses were bright, the lawns were green, and the new homeowners smiled for photos beside the gates. But inside the HOA office, something darker was growing. Mr. Clark and his team had signed the deal because they had no choice. But behind closed doors, they were planning something else, something that would take Sarah down once and for all. The quiet threat one rainy afternoon. Sarah received a letter. It looked official, sealed in a white envelope with the HOA logo on top. When she opened it, she frowned. It said her ownership rights were being reevaluated due to boundary adjustments. It was a lie. Sarah knew they were trying to trick her again, to rewrite the landlines, to undo what she had earned. She folded the paper neatly and placed it inside her folder. She didn't get angry. She just smiled. "They still don't understand who they're dealing with," she whispered. The mysterious stranger that evening, a black car stopped in front of her house. A young man stepped out, dressed in a simple jacket, holding a file. He introduced himself as Ethan Cole, a journalist from Atlanta. "Miss Johnson," he said softly, "I've been following your story. I think the HOA is hiding something big. Can I show you something?" Sarah invited him in. Ethan opened his file and spread out several printed emails and property papers. He pointed to one letter stamped months before the construction began. "This is a permit for development," he said. It was signed using a fake signature from a county official who never worked there. The HOA forged the document to start building early. Ow. Sarah leaned closer. Her eyes narrowed. "So they didn't just steal my land," she said slowly. "They broke the law." Ethan nodded. "And if you want, we can prove it." The hidden files. The next day, Ethan and Sarah visited the county archives. They dug through records for hours. Inside dusty boxes, they found what they were looking for: the original land permit applications. None had been approved. The HOA had created false ones and bribed a low-level employee to insert them into the files. It was a perfect cover-up until now. Sarah copied everything. She didn't plan to run to the media yet. She wanted to see how far the HOA would go. That night, she called her lawyer, Rachel. "They forged documents," Sarah said. "Are you sure?" "I have proof," Sarah replied, "and I'm going to let them bury themselves deeper." The HOA's desperation. Meanwhile, Mr. Clark was losing control. The investors wanted profits, not lawsuits. He shouted at his team, blaming everyone but himself. Rumors spread that some of the workers who handled the fake permits were ready to talk. Then one morning the news broke. A local channel released an investigation report. The title flashed on screens: "Green Meadows HOA under fraud investigation, forged permits found." The town exploded with anger. Buyers feared losing their homes. Reporters crowded the HOA building. Mr. Clark tried to blame a paperwork mistake, but no one believed him. When asked for comment, Sarah simply said, "Sometimes the truth doesn't need my voice. It speaks for itself." The twist: a week later, Ethan called Sarah again. "There's more," he said. "The HOA isn't giving up. They're planning to file a case against you, claiming you faked your deed." Sarah didn't even flinch. "Good," she said. "Let them try. They'll walk right into another trap." She knew something they didn't. Her great-grandfather's land deed had been recorded not once, but twice, once in the local record and once in the state archive, sealed and protected under historic land ownership law. That meant even the highest court couldn't take it away from her. The calm before the fire as the sun set. Sarah stood outside her house, watching the lights of Green Meadows flicker in the distance. The same houses that once represented arrogance now looked fragile, like castles made of glass. She whispered to herself, "They built on my land, they tried to buy me, and now they're trying to erase me. But I'm still here." Her trap wasn't over yet. This time, she wasn't just defending her land, she was defending her name, her family, the truth itself. And soon, the whole town would see how far one woman could go when pushed too far. The courthouse in Georgia had never been this full. Reporters, homeowners, lawyers, and curious locals filled every seat. Everyone had come to see one woman, Miss Sarah Johnson, the landowner who dared to fight an entire HOA. Outside, cameras flashed. Inside, the air was tense. On one side of the courtroom sat the HOA team, led by Mr. Clark, now pale and restless. On the other side sat Sarah, calm as ever, holding her old brown folder like a shield. She didn't have a big legal team, only her lawyer, Rachel Miller, and the quiet strength of truth on her side. The battle begins. The HOA's lawyer, a tall man with silver hair, stood first. "Your Honor," he began confidently, "the defendant, Miss Johnson, is presenting outdated and unverified documents. Her claim of ownership is based on a deed that cannot be authenticated." He spoke for nearly an hour, showing printed maps and official letters. He called her story emotional but inaccurate. The crowd nodded. Some whispered, then it was Rachel's turn. She stood slowly, holding Sarah's folder. "Your Honor," she said softly, "these aren't just old papers. They are certified land deeds signed by the county and verified by the state. The HOA didn't make a mistake. They built on land that was never theirs." She opened the folder, revealing the original 1911 deed, the state copy, and a forensic report proving both were genuine. The room fell silent. The moment of truth, Rachel turned toward Mr. Clark. "Mr. Clark," she said, "did your company verify land ownership before construction?" "Of course," he replied quickly. "Then why," Rachel asked, showing a document, "did your team use a forged county signature to begin development early?" Gasps filled the courtroom. Sarah watched quietly as the color drained from Mr. Clark's face. Rachel placed Ethan's documents on the judge's desk: emails, bank transfers, and fake permits. The judge frowned. "Mr. Clark, this is serious evidence. Do you deny these are your company's records?" "I don't recall," Clark stuttered. Sarah leaned back in her chair, whispering to herself, "You remember well enough when it's someone else's land." The crowd turns outside. The story spread like wildfire. Local news stations broadcast the trial live. Viewers called Sarah a hero, symbol of justice for small landowners. People who once doubted her now stood outside the courthouse holding signs. "Respect her land. Justice for Sarah Johnson." Even the homeowners of Green Meadows started supporting her. They realized the HOA had lied to them too, selling homes on stolen property. Families who once looked down on her were now standing by her side. For the first time, Sarah wasn't fighting alone. The trap snapped shut in the third day of trial. Rachel called a surprise witness, a former HOA employee. Nervous and sweating, the man confessed that he was ordered to file fake land papers and was paid cash to keep quiet. "Mr. Clark told us it didn't matter," he said. "He said no one would believe an old woman living in a wooden house." The courtroom went silent again. Mr. Clark buried his face in his hands. That one sentence changed everything. Verdict after hours of discussion, the judge returned. His voice was calm but firm. "The court finds that Miss Sarah Johnson is the rightful owner of the disputed land. The HOA acted illegally by constructing property on private land and by forging official documents." He looked directly at Mr. Clark. "You and your partners are ordered to compensate Miss Johnson for all damages, legal costs, and property value, effective immediately." A wave of applause filled the courtroom. Sarah didn't stand or shout. She simply nodded, her eyes glistening. For her, justice wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity, and now she had both. The silent victory that evening. Sarah walked out of the courthouse as reporters called her name. She stopped only once and said, "I didn't win because I was strong. I won because I didn't give up." She reached home. She looked at the bright lights of Green Meadows again. Homes built on her soil, now legally hers. The same people who ignored her now waved and smiled. But deep down, Sarah knew the story wasn't completely over. The HOA was broken, but someone still hadn't been punished, someone higher up, who approved it all. Sarah's eyes hardened. "One more secret left," she said softly, "and I'll find it." The trap wasn't just closed. It had one last spring left to snap. The town had moved on, or at least it seemed that way. The courthouse battle was over. The HOA was broken. The land was hers again. But Sarah Johnson couldn't rest. She knew deep inside, someone powerful had helped the HOA from the shadows. Someone with money, influence, the arrogance to think they could bury the truth forever. Every time she passed by the new homes of Green Meadows, she felt it, the sense that something unfinished still waited in the dirt. Beneath those perfect lawns, the whisper in the papers one morning, Sarah received a letter. It wasn't from the HOA or a lawyer, it was from an anonymous sender. Inside was a single sheet of paper with only one sentence. "If you want to know who started it all, look at the land office records from 5 years ago. No name, no signature. Just a hint, Sarah called Ethan Cole, the journalist who had once helped her. Someone's still playing a game, she told him. Then let's end it, he replied. They met at the county office the next day. Dusty folders, old records, forgotten names. They searched for hours. Then Ethan found something strange. A land transfer file signed. 5 years before the HOA project began, it showed that a local bank manager, a man named Robert Hensley, had quietly purchased dozens of acres near Sarah's land at a suspiciously low price. And later financed the entire Green Meadows development. Sarah looked at the name and froze. Robert Hensley, she whispered. He's the one who refused my loan 30 years ago. He said my land wasn't worth anything. Now it all made sense. He had started it. He had built the trap and then walked into hers. The hidden empire. Ethan dug deeper. Hensley wasn't just a banker. He was the silent owner of 3 construction companies and part of the very board that approved Green Meadows. He had made millions by using fake land evaluations, marking poor land as worthless. Then buying it cheap and reselling it to developers. Sarah's land was supposed to be his biggest win. But she had ruined his plan. He wanted to erase your name from the map, Ethan said. Then we'll write it bigger, Sarah replied. They decided to expose him. Ethan began preparing a new article, one that would tell the full story. The forged signatures, the stolen land, and the banker who thought he could outsmart a woman with a notebook and an old folder. The showdown when the article went live was everywhere. Local news, national headlines, even online platforms. Banker behind HOA fraud revealed. Robert Hensley accused of land scheme. The town exploded again. Reporters gathered outside the bank. Hensley tried to deny it, but documents spoke louder than words. Even his own employees came forward, revealing that he had forced them to approve fake loans and hide evidence. A week later, the FBI opened an investigation. His empire began to crumble. Sarah didn't celebrate. She simply sat on her porch, watching the news quietly. For her, this wasn't revenge, it was balance. He thought power meant money, she said softly. But power is truth. The legacy months passed. Green Meadows was no longer a symbol of greed. Under Sarah's ownership, the community changed. She opened a small park named after her parents, the Johnson Garden. Built on the exact spot where the HOA once tried to fence her out, children played there now. Families greeted her with respect. Even the people who once ignored her called her Miss Sarah with pride. Ethan visited her one evening. You know, people are calling you a legend, he said. Sarah smiled. Legends don't live in big houses, she replied. They live in people's memories. He nodded. What will you do next? Nothing, she said. The land will do the talking now. The final scene late that night, as the town slept, Sarah walked to the edge of her land. The moonlight touched the grass, the same soil her great-grandfather once tilled. She knelt down, running her hand across it gently. We did it, she whispered. They tried to take you, but we won. A soft wind passed through the trees, like a whisper of approval. Sarah smiled and walked back to her house, leaving footprints on the earth that would never be erased. Behind her, a new sign stood near the road, shining under the moonlight. Welcome to Johnson Fields, founded on truth. The story that began with greed ended with grace. A woman with no power had beaten the powerful, and her land, her family's legacy, would stand forever.